Hi, Fritz.
Hey,
How are you today?
doing well. How about you?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Thank you for meeting with me today. I really appreciate you taking the time. So I'm just gonna ask you a few questions. Kind of get like a discussion going on. Talking more about like the Asian culture and things like that. So tell me a little bit about yourself.
So, my name is Fritz Ramirez. I'm 24 years old. I am a proud member of the LGBTQIA plus community. I actually recently just came out about a year ago. I'm also Filipino American. Currently, I work full time in influencer marketing, and I live in San Francisco. And I think that's a pretty LGBTQ friendly city. So.
So yeah, as you mentioned before, you are Filipino American. How do you express your culture?
How do I express my culture? Um, I feel like culture is very deep rooted, so it's almost like hard to pinpoint how I express my culture just because I feel like implement it in all aspects of my life, from what I wear, the things I watch, the people I follow on social media, the things I eat. A lot of my culture, I believe, stems from how I was raised in my family, which is in a very Christian Filipino household. And like as an adult now, I'm starting to see how those teachings transpire and like reflect in my life in my everyday encounters. Um, Also, I feel like as an Asian American, I'm also like learning more about what it means to be Filipino American and like what my responsibilities are. Um, for example, like at work, we have um, resource groups within HR where Asian communities and employees like gather once a month to just talk about their heritage and talk about things that are affecting the Asian community. So that's something that I'm really involved in currently, and just like learning more about Asian Americans in the industry and then also like on a personal level.
Mhm. I think that like being Asian American, there's always a lot to learn. And our parents can teach us so much when we're growing up. So a little bit more is like um as we grow older, it's kind of like up to ourselves to kind of like learn more about ourselves, our culture, and kind of like our identity. So I really
Yeah,
do appreciate that like your work has that monthly meetings with the Asian Americans within your workplace. Do they
yeah.
do that with other cultural or other cultures too as well?
Yeah, we have resource groups for our Black employees, our Latin communities, and we have one for our LGBTQIA plus community as well.
Good.
Yeah,
Um,
so it's like really nice just because like a lot of times in my career, like you don't really think about our personal identities and how they affect our work, but I think in this day and age, we kind of have to talk about those things, and it's important to share our personal stories because I think it by not ignoring like who we are as people, um, it's overall just going to be better for the company, and it'll open up people to like so many more different perspectives and viewpoints.
I think it's nice. You can kind of like see the progression that it has within like companies.
Mhm.
I bet like they didn't have that like a couple years ago. Like not really, putting like identity aspect into like the workplace. I think it's just
Yeah.
like work is work and your personal life is like, like when you clock out, when you go,
Mhm.
that's it. So it doesn't really tie into like your workplace and what you do. But I really think that like, in this day and age, it does have like that the impact, and I'm really happy to see that too as well.
Yeah, agreed.
So another question is like, would you think like the Filipinx culture ties with how we express ourselves within the LGBTQIA community?
um One moment, hold on. Sorry.
It's okay.
That what was the question? I'm sorry.
Oh, do you think that the Filipinx culture ties with how we express ourselves within the LGBTQIA community?
Yeah. um I am so sorry. I'm
It's
back home
okay.
for the holidays, so um how do we I'm sorry, what was the question?
No worries, no worries. Does Filipinx culture tie with how we express ourselves within the
Oh
LGBT?
yes, yes, yes. Okay, so I actually think that Filipino culture um ties a lot to do with like how I express myself and as a gay Filipino, is because growing up in a Filipino household, it's like we're very religious, and I think like a lot of Filipinos are very religious too. So it's almost like a taboo to talk about talk about sexuality, let alone being gay. And there's things within being a gay person that like you have to talk about, and that you wish you had conversations with, just because like who else do you talk to? So I think that was kind of something that I had to deal with growing up, just because like normally, or like not normally, but like in many households you could have like the birds and the bees talks, but like in a Filipino household you don't really have that. And especially with a gay, like someone like myself, like I don't think my parents would even know how to start that conversation. So I think I had to do a lot of like research and like studying on my own about like what it means to be a gay Filipino, and like also how that goes to infect with like other aspects of my life. So
I can kind of relate. I grew up as a Catholic. So my parents again, like, were very religious. So when I came out to them, like in high school, like they didn't know what to say. At first they were kind of like more against it, just because like it's
mhm,
like against like the values or like the norms that like most Filipinos are like used to. So it wasn't even about like being gay, that concerned my mom. It was just like her having grandkids.
mhm,
So I kind of told her like, oh, I can still have kids. I can adopt. Like I don't necessarily have to have like a girl to like have kids. And then mind you, like my sister already has 4 kids, so it's like, oh, do you want more?
mhm,
So things like that. And also, like, I feel like in Filipino households, like like the men have to be like the strong ones. They can't show like any feminine side or
right,
things like that, or it's like very frowned upon. And like in like Filipino culture, like we have like words that kind of like describes like a gay person, like bakla or like tomboy or things like that for girls.
mhm.
And things like that, yeah.
Yeah, I
Oh,
definitely think like I know that like if I have kids, like these are conversations that I would want to have with them, just because like I feel like had I had those conversations growing up, I wouldn't be like 24 still trying to figure out like who I am, you know?
so yeah, it does like kind of like affect like how we grow as a person and kind of like learning more about
Mhm,
our identity. And it sucks because like I wish kind of like I figured out myself earlier in my years instead of like now where I have to focus more on like my school, my work. It's kind of like
mhm.
adding more to like an identity crisis. It's like what else can happen to you?
Yeah,
Also, like in like the homeland, like I think being gay is kind of like a comedic thing.
it is. That's so true.
There's like a lot of like actors or like famous people that like are gay,
Mhm.
but like I feel like being funny is like kind of like their thing and like
Yeah.
expected. And I know like I learned that like there's like a lot of like lingos in the Philippines like that uses kind of like expresses like how people in the LGBTQ there. So it's kind of like that, like learning more about the culture like here, and then back
Hmm.
here now like kind of like has its similarities, but also it's like its differences.
Hmm.
Um, so we talked about like like being gay like in a Filipino household and like how it is kind of like back in the homeland. I also wanted to like kind of like express like like being gay in as an Asian American. I think there's like a lot of like toxic things that comes into it. Like a little part of like racism, things like that, or like what yellow fever is.
Oh yeah.
So things like that, like I think being like Asian in part of the community is like very hard just because like like that racism part where oh like I'm not like attracted to Asians or
Yeah.
it's kind of like that. Do you have any experiences with that or like do you know anything about like being Asian in the gay community?
I personally don't have any personal experiences that come to mind. Just because like I am like recently
Mhm.
like out. So no, nothing nothing in particular. How about yourself?
Um, I've experienced it. Like I feel like in the gay community, like there's like a lot of like hookups, like especially like hookup culture. So there's like
Mhm.
a lot of applications like Grinder, like Tinder and things like that. Um, or they're kind of like, oh, like, are you Asian? And then like they're not interested just because like simply like that. So things like that, kind of like the small like.
You know what? You are right.
Do you have experience in that?
Yeah, definitely relatable. Yes, you're right.
You want to talk about it? This is a brave
Um,
space, by the way. This is a brave
no,
space.
I don't think it's that deep. I don't think it's that deep. But pretty much like what you said. Like everybody has their preferences and rightfully so, but I think there are just like some weird like things that I've experienced within the gay community where it's just like, oh, that's a little racist. Like it doesn't even seem like a preference at this point. So
Microaggressions
um yeah, really weird.
sucks. I think that's like the most like toxic part about like, being gay
Mhm.
in the community or like being Asian. I think there's like a lot of memes that comes to that too as well, like on
Mhm.
TikTok or things like that. Everyone's like, oh, like it's like small humor. Like I feel like we make it kind of like a funny thing, but it's like very serious too as well. Um,
Yeah.
let's see.
Also, you know what, now that you mention it, I feel like also I think just like as Asian Americans, we've always had the stigma of like being very submissive.
Mm.
Um, and I think like being gay Asian American, especially like a guy, like you're people like gay guys will automatically assume that you're like submissive or you're like more feminine or like they just have this idea of who you are and it's just like obviously based off of like stereotypes.
And there are like words for that too, describes those type of people, like like bottom, like for those like who are kind of like more feminine or like more like submissive, and then like the top part, like for like more like masculine or like more what do you call it? Um, kind of like more like the man in a relationship type. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
so let's see. We talked about our experiences. How did it feel like when you came out like a year ago, if you don't mind sharing?
How did it feel?
Yeah, or like what was the process? Um,
Oh, you know what? Like my sexuality was like a huge part of me, even while in the closet. And obviously, when I did come out, it was like a really great moment for me. It was like a really uplifting moment. Felt like a weight was like lifted off my shoulders, and it was a lot easier than I expected. Luckily, my friends and my family were very accepting of it, and I was blessed to have like such supportive people in my life. But I know like for others, it may not be that easy, and I think that's why people are so hesitant to come out. And yeah, I think that like I'm glad to see like where society is going, just because like we are obviously like more accepting, but there are still are still like hardships within our community that prevent people from being open to who they are.
I know like coming out is like very serious. It is like kind of like a hard thing. I know like when I came out, it was like I did it outside of a shop, right? So like my mom was pushing the cart, and then out of nowhere, I was just like, "Mom, I'm gay," and then she was like, "Oh, why are you saying this?" And I was like, I think that was the time when the Orlando shooting happened in the gay club. So I was
Yeah.
kind of like scared. I was a senior in high school, so I was just scared that like if I went out and then there was like a shooting, God forbid, um, I wouldn't have like the chance to tell my mom. So I kind of like just wanted to get it done here and there. So like you said, like some experiences like when coming out isn't as good. So I was one of those people. My mom was like super against it. But my siblings were very supportive. My brother kind of like said that he knew already. Just like, oh, you didn't tell me before I knew. Um, and my sister too, like she was very supportive. She told me that she loved me. And then my sister's husband, my brother-in-law also like kind of like sat me down while we were at the beach. Um, and then he was just like telling me how brave I was to do that. And that like his brother too also had like a hard time coming out. So I really appreciate the support. I think with the support like from the rest of my family, my mom's like in denial, kind of like lower down. Like it wasn't as severe because I already had like, backup and the support that I needed to like keep going and to like, love myself. My dad accepted it, even though like he still jokes around if I have a girlfriend or not. So like humor like that, I think I really appreciate that. Just because I know they're not serious, but like they're still kind of like like the playful thing.
Mhm.
And speaking of coming out, have you watched movies with like LGBTQIA like topics that are coming out? And do you think like it portrays like a false kind of like situation when someone comes out?
I don't believe I've watched anything in particular. Um, but I feel like the fact that um there are movies where they can just like talk about people's different perspectives and just like people coming out in different experiences. Like I think that's just like great to share. I can't think of one in particular,
You
to be
watched
honest.
Simon?
Hmm?
Love Simon.
No, I haven't watched that. Yeah,
I
I
would
heard it
recommend
was good though.
it's very good.
Yeah, yeah, I heard it was
Or like even like Moonlight, I think he won like an Oscar too. So movies like
good.
that like really like give like the community kind of like more like the realistic aspect of it,
Mhm.
like more like figuring out your identity and things like that, and where you kind of like
Yeah,
fit in the community.
yeah. I think it's like I could see why like you asked that question, like why it could be portrayed like in a bad light. I think that sometimes maybe if you over like glamorize it and like making it into like this, it's like sometimes like it isn't
Hmm.
the best experience for most people. So like it's good that if they're showing it in a good light, it's encouraging people to do it. But I think it's also realistic to show that sometimes when you do come out, not you're not always gonna get the outcome that
Yeah,
you want or the reaction from your loved ones, and that's fine.
that's true. I agree with that. Um, so I think my last question is, what advice would you give other Asian Americans or Filipinx Americans in the LGBTQIA plus community?
Ooh. Just do you. That's it. Period. No, I think my advice would be to just continue learning about yourself and your self identity. I think just like people in general, are just like we're so multidimensional that it's not just about being Filipino and being LGBTQIA. Like I think it's important to just like explore and learn about ourselves, and I think there's something to learn about ourselves every day. So yeah, we're just keep learning about yourself. That's it, and do you.
And to like, like not like have others kind of like hinder your progress when it comes to like figuring out yourself. I know like
What was that?
oh I said like how others kind of like hinder our progress of like figuring out
Mhm.
ourselves. I think sometimes like we care too much about like what other people think, so it kind of like slows us down, like figuring ourselves out. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just like once you kind of like like put away like those like voices and then just like kind of focus on your own thing, I think you'll
Yeah.
go into like like love yourself more or like learn how to and kind of like begin that step to great progress.
Yeah, of course. And I also think there's like a lot of value in having or finding people within these communities and just like having these conversations and just like sharing different perspectives and experiences. Like there's like parts of the LGBTQIA community and like different perspectives that I don't know much about, but like the more you expose yourself to those people, the more that you learn, and ultimately like you learn more about yourself that way. So that's why I appreciate you having this interview with me and just like sharing your perspective too. So
Thank you. I really appreciate you taking the time today. I guess that's it for this interview. Again, Fritz, thank you so much. And holidays are coming up soon, so happy holidays to you, okay?
Yeah, that's you too.